As the world prepares to watch Paralympians compete, what kind of deal do disabled travellers get?
Obviously they'd like me off the plane and I'd like to get off the plane, but until they find my wheelchair, I just don't want to do that.
On this week's programme, we discover what life on the road is like for BBC correspondent Frank Gardner. We travel to Italy to meet a man who died almost 5,000 years ago. And we revel in the glory of the award-winning Gardens of Granada. Hello and welcome to Fast Track. I'm Fiona Foster. It's good to have you with us. Now, in a couple of days' time, the Paralympics will start in London. Hundreds of disabled athletes from around the globe will be pushing themselves to their very limits to be the best at their sport. But while the world is watching their superhuman efforts, it's worth remembering that some disabled people face more mundane challenges in their day-to-day lives. The BBC's security correspondent Frank Gardner travels frequently to various hotspots around the world as part of his job, and he doesn't let the fact he uses a wheelchair get in his way. But nonetheless, he faces plenty of obstacles on his travels. We travelled with him to Stockholm to see what some of them are. Frank was shot while working for the BBC in Saudi Arabia 8 years ago. 6 bullets left him partially paralysed. He describes himself as a backpacker at heart, but his disability has forced him to review the way he travels.
Well, thank goodness for the internet, because if you're based in a wheelchair like me, it does usually give you the option to click on something to say, I'm going to need wheelchair assistance. And then once I get to the airport, I say, right, this is what I need, this is what I don't need. Otherwise, you kind of get corralled, if you're not careful, into some sort of wheelchair ghetto, which is no fun. Good morning. Was it Guten Tag?
Nowadays, flying is much more of a challenge.
Is that going to be wide enough to go? Do you want to try it?
He has to travel with both a wheelchair and a walking frame.
Hello? Well, actually, this is a rare luxury to be able to pre-board, to get on board before everybody else. Normally, I'm kind of kept back waiting till the last.
It's a little wide.
Well,
Boarding a plane takes a lot longer than before. And everything involves a great deal more planning.
right. This is actually a pretty good workout for me anyhow. It's good for my legs. Air travel for me is very different now from what it was before I was shot and disabled 8 years ago. But you know, you overcome, you improvise, you adapt, and it's really all about the attitude of the airline and the ground handling staff. Mostly people are really friendly and helpful, and they'll do everything they can to make it easy for you. One of the things that disabled people have to take into account when they're flying is how they're going to get to the toilet. On long-haul flights, nearly always they provide an in-flight wheelchair to get somebody who uses a wheelchair from here to the toilet.
The flight from London to Stockholm went smoothly. But when Frank went to get off the plane and was offered a narrow aisle chair to do this, no one could find his own personal wheelchair.
Well, we just had a bit of an altercation there. Obviously, they'd like me off the plane, and I'd like to get off the plane, but until they find my wheelchair, I just don't want to do that, because I can't live in this thing. And unfortunately, if you're dependent on a wheelchair, that is your legs. So I'm unfortunately having to be very stubborn about this.
No, we found it, so it's fine. So he's just got, but he needs it to sign it off.
Right. Okay, good. No, I'll do it, thanks. I can do this. Do you want to put it down? Thanks. You don't need to touch it, thanks. Thanks. Please, for the last time, you don't have to touch me. Thanks. That's great. The ground handling staff always very good about trying to kind of mollycoddle you a little bit and kind of manhandle you, which I absolutely hate, because what movement and mobility I have got left, I want to be able to do myself. So I'm always telling people to back off and stop handling me.
When Frank reached the baggage hall, there was more bad news. His walking frame had gone missing somewhere between London and Stockholm.
On the plane, maybe?
No, I've checked that.
It's definitely not on the plane. So where could it have gone?
So Mike, I need to call London to see
Right.
that it's not left at the gate. I know.
Look, it's not a disaster. Losing this,
Would
for
have
me,
been a
is a
disaster.
disaster. Because, you know,
But it's still, for me, it's a disaster.
this
now.
is why I try never to be separated from them.
And
As soon as I let it out of my sight, somebody goes and does something stupid with it.
Unfortunately, in this case, it was a miscommunications between the airport and the handling agents, which meant that the assistant needed request that we had requested from them was cancelled. This should absolutely not happen, and we truly apologize for it.
With the frame lost for now, Frank decides to continue his journey into central Stockholm, which means having to travel by train.
Arlanda Express hope that our visitors will have a pleasant stay in Stockholm. Kan du få hjälp om det är något?
Oh, this is really scary. I have to say it's a bit scary that, because there's a gap like that. I'm not going to fall through it, but I've got to do a kind of kangaroo hop on this to get over the gap. I've had worse.
His destination, the Scandic Victoria Tower Hotel, which claims to be one of the most disabled-friendly in Europe.
Ah, you've even got a me-sized desk here. So let me give you my passport. And
Great, thank you.
But before Frank checked into his room, he met up with Magnus Berglund, the disability ambassador for Scandic Hotels.
She's called Ada.
Ada.
She's my service dog. When we're building now the rooms, the more disabled rooms, we sell it for everyone, because we have now designed so everyone likes them. People don't say, I'm getting the handicap room. They're saying, I get the bed, they're going up and down. So we have people that are coming in and said, can I have the room with the bed? That's exactly what we were trying to do.
But Magnus, what about the cost for all of this? There surely must be a lot of extra cost involved in putting in these features.
And we see it as an investment and not like a cost.
Ah, okay, 1801, here we go. Well, we've heard so much about this being so wonderfully disabled access friendly. That'll be good. So I do that, and then I press this and it opens automatically. Ah, okay. Let's try again. There we go. No view. That is incredibly frustrating. So my head is here, and this is, you know, quite a tall wheelchair, and I'm like, where's the view? I can't see anything. So the bed raises up like that, which is nice actually. That's nice being able to have that. I mean, it's a hospital bed, but it doesn't feel like a hospital, so that's good. Somebody has thoughtfully left out a kettle here, in case I want to make something, but where do I connect this to? Remember, I'm in a wheelchair, and there is no sign of what on earth I plug this into. Right, the wet room. This is lovely. Very nice indeed. I mean, I don't actually need these things, but obviously lots of people do, so that's nice. They stay up there. I have the general impression that this feels like a room designed by somebody standing up, and I don't think, it doesn't feel like it's been validated by somebody in a wheelchair. I'm only saying all of this because this hotel prides itself on being so wheelchair friendly, and they have made a real effort, but they're not quite there yet.
The main reason Frank had travelled to Stockholm was to meet a table tennis player who's preparing for one of the biggest championships in her life.
Well, Anna Karin's done her warm-up. She's now just started her match, and probably notice she's the only person in a wheelchair in this whole place. They're not playing down to her. She's actually competing from a wheelchair against able-bodied people, and she's going to be representing Sweden at the Paralympics. It's very close, 8-7.
Anna Karin spends a lot of time flying around the world to take part in international competitions. So what's travel like for her?
I was very afraid from the beginning to travel with my wheelchair because I was afraid they were forgetting it, to break it. But it's easier to travel with a wheelchair than without.
Before heading back to London, there was just enough time for Frank to pit his skills against one of the best table tennis players in the world.
Perfect. Well done. That's your career in sports.
Getting around Stockholm in a wheelchair has been pretty easy. In fact, the only really difficult part of this journey has been getting off the plane. And I have to say that as somebody who's only spent the most recent years of their life using a wheelchair, well, I'm very lucky to have been born into this era because, 20, 30 years ago, getting around even a capital city like Stockholm would have been quite a challenge. So we've come a long way since then.
The BBC's security correspondent Frank Gardner proving that although disability needn't get in the way of travel, it can make it an awful lot more problematic. And if you're a disabled traveller, we'd love to hear whether your experiences chime with those of Frank or otherwise. Do let us know at our usual address, that's fasttrack@bbc.com, and we'll try and include as many of your comments as possible in a future programme.
3 French tourists who took photos of themselves posing with and pretending to kiss statues of Buddha have been given suspended sentences by a court in Sri Lanka. This treatment of Buddhist images and artefacts is against the law there. The mayor of Rome has claimed austerity measures are putting the city's historical sites at risk. His warning comes after a part of a 19th century wall collapsed in the Pincio area of the city. And a theme park in Israel's launched wireless donkeys. It's fitted internet routers around their necks so riders can surf the web while they trek.
Welcome back to Fast Track with me, Fiona Foster. The people of the eastern Caribbean island of Grenada have had reason to celebrate this summer. The island won its first gold medal at the London Olympics, and the island's horticulturalists struck gold for the 10th time at the UK's prestigious Chelsea Flower Show. Fast Track has been to Grenada to meet two of the team behind the island's prize-winning flowers.
You have gingers, lilies here, there's heliconias, wagonaria. This is the orchid that I keep for Chelsea because it's a beautiful, long, majestic stem, and it only flowers at this time of year. And it's got many branches, so it's not just one spray of orchids. It's spotted and it's got fuchsia and yellow.
This one has been developed through a process known as spontaneous mutation. So this is the only one that we have here in this country. And we gave it the name the Balthazar because the farm is called Balthazar. We go to Chelsea with this. Quite a lot of tourists come to Balthazar having visited Chelsea. What they will tell you after is that they never knew the plants grew that way. It's one thing seeing plants in an arrangement. Some of the plants were about 15 feet in height.
Beautiful and dangerous.
Grenada is supposed to be out of the hurricane belt because we are 12 degrees north of the equator, which is quite low down, right? So we have been very blessed. For 50 years we had nothing, and then, lo and behold, Mr. Ivan turned and came for us. And boy, did it damage the island.
The hurricane flattened everything, knocked down the buildings.
When the hurricane was finished and I walked outside and I looked at the devastation of my garden, I was in tears. We say in Grenada, I bawled, I couldn't believe it. And then you think, oh no, I can't face doing this again. This garden here is the newer garden, which was started after Hurricane Ivan, because really there was nothing here except two very large trees and a fence and the pandanus. And as the trees fell and had to clear up everything, we decided to plant a new garden here. So we've got this wonderful garden as a result of Hurricane Ivan. And so that's the benefit of having to start from scratch all over again. When I was young, I used to like doing the flower arranging bit of the gardening, but didn't really like the serious gardening. But then my mom got sick, and so I had to water the plants. And she'd be lying in her bed looking out the window and saying, "You'll be all right with the garden, you'll manage," and it grows on you.
We try to portray Grenada as a place where people can visit, and Grenada has natural beauty. It has everything. Grenada had been promoted as a destination for sun, sea and sand. But today we're going back to nature.
The award-winning Gardens of Grenada, absolutely stunning. Certainly puts my window box to shame. Now finally today, when you think of mummies, yes, you think of Egypt. But one of the world's oldest mummies comes not from Egypt, but from Italy. Karen Baumann went to South Tyrol to see the mummy for herself.
It's a landscape dominated by mountains that drift in and out of the clouds, their slopes carpeted with meadows and wild flowers. In the foothills and valleys are villages, vineyards and farms. South Tyrol has always been known for its scenery, but it was an unexpected discovery that really put it on the map. Embedded in ice, frozen intact for more than 5,000 years, it was a mummy that started drawing the crowds.
At first, it's all a bit grotesque. You're looking at this distorted figure, this mangled mass of bones. But then you see a real person, someone who actually lived 5,000 years ago.
And this is what it's thought the man looked like. He's become known as Ötzi, after the Uppsala Alps where he was found.
Ötzi is a wet mummy. He's the oldest wet mummy in the world. A wet mummy is basically a mummy with fluid still inside his cells, in his body. That makes him special because you can do experiments on Ötzi that wouldn't be possible on a dried out mummy. So like Egyptian mummies are dried out.
Ötzi was discovered along with his shoes, bow and arrows, axe and fur cap, all immaculately preserved. Suddenly, archaeologists and scientists had an insight into an age they thought had been lost forever, a time 3,000 years before Christ.
It's important to archaeology because they actually had to put the date back of the beginning of the Copper Age because they found Ötzi with a copper axe. It's important to medicine because by isolating his DNA, you can have a look at it and see predisposition to certain illnesses which clearly didn't have anything to do with our modern lifestyle.
After viewing Ötzi in death, many visitors head to Valsenales to learn how he lived. Beneath the ridge where his body was found, an interactive museum offers a taste of life in a typical Stone Age village. Fashioning bows and arrows, albeit tiny ones and with penknives rather than flint, proves a popular pastime. There's also the chance to try out the kind of weapons Ötzi would have used. He was fatally wounded by an arrow, but this doesn't seem to deter visitors from a spot of target practice. Today, Ötzi's descendants are almost as unique as him. Their region, once part of Austria and used to broker deals during both World Wars, has given them a special status, semi-autonomy, a rich cultural heritage, and 3 official languages: German, Italian and Ladin, which was introduced by the Romans.
This language stayed here in the Dolomites because it is a very isolated place and we have not big contacts with the German and the Italian culture. And so this ancient language could survive here in the mountains.
Travel around South Tyrol and you'll find a mixture of people, languages, architecture, customs, even food.
This is a typical dish from South Tyrol. It's got spaghetti and dumplings, and it's a perfect blend of Mediterranean and Alpine cuisine. Tastes good too.
And all this is set against the background of the Dolomites, where Italy's most famous mountaineer has opened his 5th mountain museum to share his love of the peaks with visitors.
Many tourists are coming from all over the world to have a week, 2 weeks in the mountains. And now they can also understand the things behind what is the mountain outside. There is history behind, there is a lot of emotions behind, there is philosophy behind.
And Messner brings us full circle. His museum is in the valley where Ötzi once lived. While the discovery of a mummy is attracting first-time visitors to South Tyrol, the mountains are bringing them back.
Karen Baumann exploring South Tyrol in northern Italy. Well, that's it for this edition of the programme. I hope you've enjoyed joining us on our travels. Next week, Rajan is off to Thailand to investigate why, with Burma opening up, Thailand needs to take its tourism upmarket. Along the way, he'll also be visiting a controversial Thai temple where seemingly tame tigers pose for pictures with the public. Is it animal conservation or exploitation? Join Rajan next week as he aims to find out. In the meantime though, if you get bitten by the travel bug, you can check out our website at bbc.com/fasttrack, and while you're there you can click through to our Facebook page and connect with travellers from all over the world. Till the next time though, from me, Fiona Foster, and the rest of the Fast Track team, thanks for watching and bye-bye.